A few meetings ago, we had a conversation at the end about the content everybody wanted. We've done this a few times before in pieces, but today I was asked by a few people in the forum to focus explicitly on configuring ServiceNow service data model. We had a little bit of a debate when we went through this that it's not the same for everybody. So we're going to look at a couple different reasons why you may configure ServiceNow different in the CSDM for different organizations. So I have a couple of the models that I've defined in our instance, and we'll jump around a bit. Before we get started, there's some people on here for the first time, and we're going to paste this URL in here, and it'll take you to our About page. Everything that you need from this forum can be found on these 4 links. So you can register for the upcoming Zoom meetings here. It's always the same link. There'll be the home page, which is where we share all the content. So there'll be some content for today that I share, which mainly this presentation. All of our stuff goes up on YouTube. And then if you want a link to our shared instance, I'm just about done with automating this, but for now you just have to email me. So if you click on this link, when you get in here, it'll email me and ask me for access to the shared instance. I think I caught up. I was about 3 weeks behind, but I think I caught up with everybody who asked me for access to the shared instance. And I'm going to use that today to do some of the demos. But the reason for this group is it's about digital transformation and thought leadership. The big thing that we really look for here is anything we can share. It doesn't matter. It could be a little video. It could be a white paper that we're presenting. It's not polished marketing demos that you're seeing here or product demos. It's more about the core of service delivery and what can we do to get there faster to improve our services. The enterprise architecture team is the team I'm on, and we're the team that hosts this. And we do try to keep these every other week during Christmas, and we fall off a little bit during the holiday seasons, but otherwise we're pretty steady every 2 weeks, kind of the show must go on attitude on this stuff. So today we're going to go through what I usually start with CSDM, because there may be some people that aren't familiar with it. So we just want to kind of level set on what it is and what it's there for. And then we'll go into some specific ServiceNow designs, some that have been shown here before, and other ones that I've run into in the field that I can just bring up for examples. And we'll kind of fumble through some and answer questions and slide stuff around so that I'm not just putting up a picture and then saying, this is why we built it this way. Right? We want to talk through some of these models. So I'll ask you to come off mute or at least drop some comments in chat so that we can talk about the models that I'm showing on the screen. Because the real thing here is to get everybody to understand. And the same way, if you have input on the models, make sure you jump in and challenge what I put up there. All right, so we're going to jump right in. And I always start with this model. I know there's some more recent ones, but I like to talk through this model. The most important part about the common service data model is the people. And I think this is what a lot of people get caught up on. The people on the outside are the people who are responsible for certain pieces. So as we go through the different domains, we'll talk about those. And if you really look at those people, what are they trying to do here? So in the design domain, there's a need that needs to be filled. So the architects and other application owners and business owners, they make decisions on what platforms are we buying. Somebody made a decision for some reason to buy ServiceNow in all of your organizations. So that probably happened at a higher level, that decision to make the final purchase. And when you buy ServiceNow, it's not valuable, right? It doesn't have any value until you give it to a build team, and the build team's able to configure it. Usually they're connecting Active Directory to it and doing things like that. Maybe doing some customization to fit your processes, or just doing some configurations on it. But whatever they have to do something to it. Even if it's Zoom like we're using right now, you still have to do something to that before it's useful. You don't just buy it and turn it on and it works right away in most cases. Now, before that team, that build team can actually do any work, right? They need to go down here and ask for an environment. So I need help from IT, whether it's network access or permissions or security. I need that operational team to get on board and support that application that was purchased. The whole job of all of us in IT, all of the IT practitioners, right, the technology teams, are to squeeze value out of those things that were bought up in the design domain. So our job is to deliver value back to that business consumer, whether they're students or constituents or patients or doctors, right? Somebody that we owe these services to, that we're delivering them. Now, there's going to be kind of a twofold thing here. We'll talk about a little bit. There's the part where we're delivering the actual service on ServiceNow, and there's the part where we're supporting the services that are being delivered. So there's like this dichotomy of support versus delivery that I like to call out all the time, because a lot of times people will say, well, why are we building that model for HR benefits when we do that in Workday? Well, we need it. We still need the model because we need to support it. So the way I look at the common service data model is that it's a reference architecture, right? That has a bunch of tables and relationships between those objects in the tables. So it's a reference architecture. So all those people on the outside can work together and either deliver the services and or support the services that their organization has. Because that's a real high level look. If you haven't seen the CSDM before, that's what the model is designed to do. Now there's always confusion about, how do we set this up, right? How do we design it and how do we build it? Because the first time it gets tough. And I know we have some people on the call that are probably really new to the common service data model, maybe haven't used it before, and then others that have done, several designs. And we want to give you a little bit for everybody on here. So we're going to take you through some simple designs first, and we'll slowly walk through a couple of the other areas. Now, what we're going to talk about today on the common service data model is the parts that you have to define manually. And so I'd like to break that out, because a lot of this is, if you guys use ITOM or our ITAM products, a lot of that where we're building all the infrastructure items underneath here, that all comes out with discovery. That's all automatic. But when you start building the app services or you start building the business applications, these are typically going to be tables that you manually populate, because there is no automation. Like we can't, unless you're going to let us attach to your financial system and you say, okay, here's our GL for buying applications. There's no real way to get business application in or your business capabilities. So they're defined somewhere manually by somebody and explicitly put into the tables. So all these areas are manual defined versus this where there's a lot of automation. So we can find these things like, sniffing the network or attaching to different discovery models. Okay, so that's my high-level pitch on what the common service data model is. Now, what happens when you build these models? So the idea behind the common service data model is to support 3 different areas. So if we look at these different processes that happen in an organization, I thought I had that on. You have kind of this top section, which is all planning for your services that you're delivering. You have the bottom section, which is more building. And then you have the center section. This is what I'm doing when I'm running a service. So when you talk about supporting a service, it's not just saying the service is broken, so I'm going to log an incident. That's the basics of supporting a service. But also supporting a service, you're saying, okay, what are the new stories that we're building to enhance that service? What are the new ideas that are coming in to enhance the service or to build new services? So as we build these artifacts out, we build these models, it's going to go in our business portfolio. We're going to have some of our applications in there. So we're going to be smarter about the way that we design. So the way that we plan up here, we're going to be smarter about the way that we build and the way that we run. So the idea to build the models is that everything we do, if you have an incident, right, that incident is first categorized against the service. So it's HR onboarding is the problem. I should know right away in the incident, I should identify what that service is. And it should be in my tables. Same thing with a demand. I have a demand for new work coming in. Well, that demand should be classified against a service. Right? And that we'll talk a little bit about here, but as the story comes in, a lot of times what happens is these are done in like Azure DevOps or Jira people use along the way. And usually where ServiceNow comes in this DevOps pipeline is with the change. So the change is against the service. So that this way we have all the artifacts we picked up from ADO, or we picked it up from Jira or GitHub. Along the way, we got all the artifacts about what was built, and we incorporate those into a change so we can hang it off the service and have that record. Right. So whether we're doing projects and building new things, or we're supporting running things, and that's the whole idea behind the model, is to support all of those operations. Right. Any questions so far? If you could drop in the chat, and Charles, maybe if there's any questions that need to be answered, you can just let me know.
Yeah, once the admins start slowing down.
Oh, okay, thanks. Or if anybody else is on there that wants to call it out. I got you double duty. All right, let's jump over to an instance. And this instance that I'm going to be using is the instance that I talked about in the beginning, where I'll give you an admin login to this instance if you want to see some of the stuff that I'm working on today. What I'm going to be using, just so we can see a bunch of things in one place, is I'm going to be using a product. It's a third-party product from Inspire. It's called Designer. And I have Designer in this instance, so you'll be able to come in and use it when you get access. So what Designer does is it lets you build these models, like I'm going to build today, and then import the models right into the database. So if you just type Designer in, you'll see Designer is right under here. And that Designer product, when I click this button, it's basically going to open up this interface here, right? It's going to open up a Designer interface, and it's running right on the instance. So that all of the diagrams that I'm going to create today for the common service data model are going to be on here. And I'll show you, if you come in here to this instance and you go to this folder, I have our meeting up here. So September 14th. And I have 3 different models that are in that folder. Actually, I'm going to put this one in here too. So I'm going to take this one up, and this 4th one, and just drag it here. There we go. So there's actually 4 models in there. So we're going to go through each of these models, and I'm just going to start with a really basic model where central IT is providing services through the service desk to the employee. Look at this. All right. So in this model, if we look at our domains that we talked about earlier, I have 3 of them represented, and I have the foundation domain up here. So it's a little bit of a different representation, but the colors stay the same. So if you're looking at the model inside of our CSDM document, the colors will basically remain the same for you. Now, what's important about these, right, is what you're creating here is it's a reference architecture, CSDM. So you're building a picture for somebody. When you're showing it like this, you're building a picture for somebody. So in this model, we might be building a picture for somebody that's supporting ServiceNow. So maybe the platform owner. So what is the platform owner interested in? Well, the platform owner is saying, as part of central IT, I need to make sure that I can supply certain services to our employees. Right. So what we have here is, as we're looking at it, we have a representation of a service desk. And so we're providing service desk services out here so that an employee can come in and create an incident. They can request hardware, or they can request software from us. And maybe those are the only 3 things we do in the beginning. And there might be a whole bunch of catalog items that are, maybe you have 4 create incidents. Well, I can create an incident if I have a hardware problem, an application problem, or a software problem. Or maybe you just have 1 incident ticket in your catalog. But this service offering describes how the contract between you and the organization to make sure the employees can create an incident and follow that incident through. The same with requesting hardware and requesting software. So this is a picture, and it would be a very different picture if I was saying, for the ServiceNow platform owner, which you'd be owning this area down here, I want to see everything. I want to see all HR, CSM. I want to see everything for ServiceNow. Right. In this picture, we're just looking at how employees are using ServiceNow as the consumers, from central IT being the provider. Okay, so the idea here, usually where you're going to start is with the business application. So the business application that was purchased is IT service management. And that's usually what you want to do. You want to be at the SKU level up here. Sometimes what will happen is in these models, you like to represent where this is running. So what you could do is I could say that we have a business application called ServiceNow. And this is going to be the platform that application is running on. So you'll have the ability to create this relationship with that business application. And you can decide if you need that in there or not, that representation for the users. Okay, and we'll define this as, usually what it is this is a platform host in your business application table. And then you have a platform application that runs on those. So in this case, ITSM is running on the ServiceNow platform. Okay, now who consumes? So if we look at this running domain now, the running domain, we have an application service, and this application service has a team that supports it. So now this is the operational environment. So instead of just being IT service management, it's saying, what is the stack that it needs to run? So IT service management needs to run on a running ServiceNow environment. So here we're representing ServiceNow prod. And we could have a couple extras here too. We could have ServiceNow dev, right? We can have these other environments here because these represent every technology stack. So one of the things that would change this a lot too is I have a couple customers that have several different prod environments, right? So you might have 3 different environments that are running the IT service management application. So I might have ServiceNow prod New York, ServiceNow prod Denver, or ServiceNow prod Division 1, ServiceNow prod Division 2, right? And that's where it gets a lot different in these areas. Is it on one contract? Or do I have to split up different contracts? So there's a lot of things, but this is the very basic look at it. Like if you're just doing IT service management, you're new, this is probably all that you need. Now, here you're saying, I'm just saying, okay, with this, I'm providing services to the employees. Now, it's going to be a little bit different if I'm providing services to other application teams. Those might be technical services instead of services that are in my business catalog. Right. So the idea here is, let's walk through a couple of use cases of what this does. So we said it supports an operational environment, right? And that's what the common service data model is. So let's say that somebody comes in and says, hey, I tried to create an incident and I keep getting a 500 error when I push the button to create an incident. And so now somebody comes into the support team, the support opens a ticket, and they could put create incident is the problem on the ticket. So they troubleshoot it here. There's somebody responsible for this service offering. It's usually going to be a tier 1 help desk. And then tier 1 says, oh, wait a minute. That is not a problem that I can work on. I need to escalate. So I need to go out here and I could say, okay, ServiceNow prod, how do I escalate to this team? So I identified ServiceNow prod, that specific environment, as the environment that is responsible. And I need to put it in their queue so that they can fix the problem. Okay, so this object has the identifier of the owner and everybody else, but they're in operations. They're not in the front end support part, right? More the catalog team. So they're not at that service desk level, but they're at the next service desk level. Any questions on that model so far? If you want to come off mute, or anybody wants to read the queue. I'm going to go up in levels of difficulty as we go. This is a really basic one that you could probably get away with to start with.
This is Tina. I do have a question. I see that you're making ITSM a top level business application. We have implemented lots of capabilities in the platform. Would we make them all like SPM, like some of the SecOps things? Would we make each of those business applications, or
Yeah.
would it be capabilities or something underneath the business applications? This is a very different approach.
Yeah, I would make each one of everything you're paying for. So when you pick up a ServiceNow invoice, it says you're paying this much for IT service management. So that should be a business application because you're purchasing those separately. ServiceNow is just the platform. But what you're buying is those applications that run on the platform.
So then our custom applications, you would make those top level business applications too? We have a lot of custom apps, you know.
It's more what you're buying up here.
Okay.
Yeah. It's more what you're buying. And then we can talk about where the other custom apps might go.
I think I disagree with that a little, John. Like to me,
track those things centrally.
when you're looking at a business app, you're looking at a thing that you're going to design, you're going to deploy, you've got a roadmap for, you've got a budget for, you've got an operation, you've got a development team that's going to pay attention to it. So there's an art here, and there is no strict right or wrong, but like, if you've got the same team, the same budget, the same roadmap for all the things, bundle them because that's fewer entities to manage at the business apps level. If those things have separate teams, budgets, roadmaps, etc., split them. It's based on what's useful for you, not trying to fit into an arbitrary set of rules.
Yep. Yeah, I think I agree with
apps
that.
Don't actually exist. They're logical things for planning and design purposes. App services actually exist. Those are environments, instances of the app.
So this one is one example. If somebody was applying for drone permits and I had a custom app that I developed, that would be in my, instead of, this would be like a custom app in my business app table that I'm supporting. And there'd be a cost to that, and there'd be code for that would be separate from the configuration for this. So that could be in the business app table as a custom app. We'll show a couple in the next one too, as I go into the example. It could be a product as well.
Hey, I did have a question with that last conversation. So take ServiceNow, for example. It's actually a good product. And you're breaking it out into different modules that ServiceNow has. We're looking at more, the application would be maybe like ITSM or the project management module, and the business app would be the family. So how would you relate the components to a family so you can actually group them into a suite of applications?
Well, one way would be to do it like this, where ServiceNow's, are you talking about a suite like in the according to the platform?
Sorry, yes. So if it's ServiceNow or say Microsoft or Adobe or Azure or something else where you have a family of applications, and under that applications you're separately licensing each different product.
So John, don't you have that same situation with like SPM where APM is sold separately, right? Would that not be the example that we're discussing right now?
Yeah, so that'd be a service. The way that one way to group them is that it would be a ServiceNow would be the platform host for the applications running on the platform. So that's one grouping construct that you get in the business application tables. There's others too, like the fact that these are platform applications is another grouping that you'll get in the business application table. So when you go up there and you're looking at the stuff that we're supporting, basically anything that's costing us money, whether we're licensing it or like to Charles's point, this does go up here because you got somebody supporting code for it. So it's costing us bodies, right, to work on that application.
So John, could you not say ownership and the decision-making level? That would be another criteria to determine whether or not it sits at that level. So,
yes.
So for an example, we break ours down, like we have an ITOM owner, an ITAM owner, we have
sort of
SPM owner, right?
They don't interact
and,
with
and that would be that common denominator that the other gentleman was talking about.
Yeah, and remember up here is the compliance position, right? Versus the ownership of the actual technology and the support,
Mhm.
right? So there's some splitting up down here too.
Okay.
Right? Like it might not be ServiceNow prod, and I'll get it. Let's go to the next example, and I think we'll get into some more complex ones. But up here is usually you're managing some code or configuration, and that's the and the financials, right? So that's what this part is about. It's not being able to say, hey, I have a problem with request hardware. I want to put an incident. Like these are not operational CIs up here. It's more of the contractual CI to actually say this is the team that's working on the code, or this is the team that's paying the contract.
I'm not sure this diagram is.
Yeah, so at Excel Energy, this is exactly how we're trying to use it, and we're still building our data out. But it comes down to are we if there's ever conversations, are we spending money on this? Are we investing more money in this? Are we looking to reduce our spend on this for an alternative for something else?
Yep.
It's financials, it's people, it's all of those. They're all slightly different perspectives.
Yep.
So you may need to produce slightly different views on them, but it comes down to that conversation of what are we spending on it? How important is it?
Yeah.
Is it coming or is it going? It's those types of conversations.
Yeah, it's the business part, right? Is it something that the business cares about? And that's when it goes in that table because they're spending money on it. So.
And you have $10 to spend, but they want $14 of spend. And you say, well, where are we going to put it? Right? Which of these things are we not going to spend money on, or do we have to reduce our spend on, or get rid of?
Yeah.
Hey, John, I've got a quick comment and then some catching up on the comments thread. So when you're talking, the comment is when you're talking CSDM, you're not trying to do a detailed documentation of your software architecture. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make because they come into modeling from trying to do like software architecture. And so they want to show like all the microservices and they want to show all the ways that it's distributed across all their devices and all the parts and how they mesh together. That's not what this is about. Like the blue area is about here's things you need for planning and design. The orange area is here's things you need for operations. And none of those people care about that detailed architecture of your software. That's a different set of artifacts. So keep that in mind. This is a summary of your application to be useful and how it fits into use in the business. Now on to the comment thread. There was a request to try and leave questions till the end, but that's always tricky with these because if you lose the context where the question was asked, it doesn't make sense, but it does destroy the flow. So John, do you have a preference on how we handle that?
Yeah, let's go on to this. Let's hold it till after this one. So we'll do one more model just to give an example, and then we'll go into some questions. Because I think hopefully the second example will clear some up. So this changes things a lot. This is what I presented last week, where we're providing employee services, right? So this is where ITSM is Department 1 is using it. And then we offer through Central IT, we offer IT service management as a service to other departments. So Department 2 says, I really like what Department 1 has. So Department 2 comes in and says, hey, I want to use IT service management, but I don't want you to do it all for me. I don't want to use your fulfillers. I don't want to use your incident ticket, right? I want to use ITSM instead of buying another solution. So how do they come on to your central instance? Right. So here you have this team comes in and says, I want IT service management. And as part of the agreement, Central IT says, okay, we're going to do some configuration for you and make it so that you have, when you come into the portal, or you have your own portal, or you have your own ticket on the central portal, whatever the case may be. And then you have a place for your fulfillers to go to see only the tickets from Department 2, right? That's basically what I'm agreeing to give you in the beginning. And then after we build and configure, we're able to come back and say, okay, Department 2, now you can use this for your fulfillers, and this is your URLs for your end users. And everybody's happy. They can come in and do what they want to do. So if you're modeling for this, there's a couple different perspectives here. So the first one is that I am the product manager here. So I'm the provider of this service because I'm managing this IT service management offering in my catalog to other departments to use. Right, so now if you look at the common service data model from that perspective, it's going to give us more of a central employee, so ITSM. So ITSM is the service. And I just started putting some of these together so you guys can come in and get, like, if anything comes close to what you're looking for, that's the idea here, is that you can pull these down and play around with them or clone them. I'll show you how to do that in the central instance. But the idea here is that you still have all of these, you know, the incident management and asset management like we were doing before. But the idea here is now you're using ServiceNow Prod as the platform because you're letting other departments come in, and you're saying other departments could come in and request change management. And they can request incident management, right? Or they can request these either individually, or you just say, come in and I'll give you IT service management and we'll configure what you want on it. But the idea here is that you, as the provider in central IT, have an agreement with the department to provide IT service management. Right, so it's a very different view than the service desk view we looked at before. It's more of a, you know, it's a different consumer with maybe a different provider. Maybe the ServiceNow team isn't providing that, but you have a team that provides it directly, that provides support for that service directly, the IT service management as a service. So that's like a different view that you would, this artifact here, right? This view that you would create that would look something like this if you're using this as a reference architecture. This would be owned by whoever owns that ITSM product, whoever owns this here, right? Who owns that thing that I can come buy on and I'll host it on my shared instance for you, right? What is that package that they're offering there? So that person has a very different view than the one that we looked at before. And that's why there's going to be a lot of these views depending on what you're looking at it for. Now, what does this person care about in central IT? Well, they care about the fact that this is the running environment, and I need that in order to meet my contractual obligations over here. I also might care about the fact that when I provide change management, there's a contract up here that I'm dependent on in order to make sure that I'm providing change management. So if I'm the product manager, I might be doing chargebacks. And a lot of people in the customers I deal with are charging back for incident management on that shared instance. And so it's a different perspective on the same stuff because now there's a different provider and a different consumer. Okay. Right, and the next one gets pretty complex. So let's take, is there any questions, Charles, you think right now would be worth going through? And we could. You still there, Charles?
Sorry, yes, I was talking to you. There was an interesting one earlier on the service offerings and do they only apply to the prod instance? And it was kind of answered in the chat, but I think a more full answer would be is they mostly apply to the prod instance. I like differentiating my service offerings by what they're targeted at. And so like, let's say my overall service is an email messaging communication service. I might have email inbox, email that you can provision for North America, which would be production, end user, real usage, versus email provisioning for Europe or Asia as different service offerings. Your non-prod application instances would still have essentially those service offerings. They're just not targeted to anywhere, and you wouldn't publish them, therefore development and testing purposes. So yeah, they technically still kind of would exist, but nobody bothers with them because they're not really consumed. And that whole green area is about who's consuming it and what does it mean to the business.
In the example I did in last week's meeting, I had a thing where once you push on that I want ITSM and I'm from a department, it creates an environment for you in the dev environment so that you can log in right away. So that would be one example where I'm offering a development, kind of a trial environment. I'm using dev as a trial environment, right, to set up your ITSM service. So that would be one example where you have dev. It's dependent on dev to provide that proof of value that's not in prod yet, right?
Yeah, great example.
So,
Go ahead with your question.
somebody else had a question?
And then, see, now they're not speaking up again. There was a question, Matt Barnett, around telco modeling. Can you go ahead and just ask your question?
Yeah, no problem. So we run a telco here, and it's all good talking about the business applications themselves, but we're really struggling with the modeling of how we define the all of our services when it comes down to selling basically connectivity to customers. We then say that it's fine to have a business product, to say whatever it is, whether it's to wholesale customer, to a wholesale partner, a business, a B2B customer, or a residential customer. But when you try and link it back in, the middle application service, we don't know, should that business service offering be linked to an application service, and we define it as a product, and we talk about how the product is built for that customer, or should we be doing it a different way? And we're just wondering for a bit of guidance more in the telco space, because we understand from an application point of view, it's very clear, but from when you sell non-applications, the model doesn't seem to be there, or it's struggling to replicate what we're trying to do. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah. When you get to the offerings, and this one we're talking specifically about ServiceNow, but I know as we get into those different industries, there's going to be a lot of different things that we attach to, different models that we extend. So other reference architectures that bleed into these, like I know telco has their own. On the offering, so you're talking specifically on the offering side, like different levels of service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how do you then relate it back to something that is that the teams themselves would understand, the actual technical teams that would then troubleshoot that actual technology and be able to say, we've got an incident for this wholesale partner on this product. How do we then get that back into the technical teams using the model so they can visualize the impact if they were to do changes or an incident come back in, and we routed it in the right direction?
Usually the way I like to look at it is so what you have up here, just say these are Linux boxes, right? Or Linux servers, I'll call them, not boxes anymore. So they take care of, this person here this is a technical service where they take all the Linux servers. So usually up here we have, this is level 1, where I come in and I say, I have a problem with this service. Level 1 should have enough information to say, here's the 3 stacks that I'm dependent on. So it may be that ServiceNow is one of those stacks, but then you have Esri's another stack, and there's another stack here that's my billing system. So that level 1 should have these lines. They should be able to look at the lines and say, hey, that's a problem with this. And then level 2, right? So now you're at level 2 at this application service level.
And that's more the tricky, because if you're selling a wires only service and it's just hardware, there isn't any applications involved, it's not really an application service. And that's where we're seeing, do we in essence ignore that it's an application service and say, actually, here's the vertical stack? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an asset itself. So it's really not depending on anything out here, no connectivity or anything like that.
No, it's a mixture of, say, like 15 different bits of infrastructure that fit together to deliver a service, but it's not really an application service because there's no applications involved. And that's where the model we go, is it right? Is the principles behind it to put it, still model that as an application service, just it's not an application? Or is it a big, here's a no, don't do that, put it, everything is a technical service, and then you group it and say, ultimately the teams are responsible for delivering this type of technical capability. So this team supports the routers, this team supports the transmission equipment, this team supports
Yep.
whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think I had an example like that in the next one where there's some technical services in there that gets a little bit more complex. So maybe this one will help a little bit.
While John's pulling that up, each of the entities in the different colored areas support different sets of processes. And so I'd say it's an anti-pattern, it's a non-best practice to try and force stuff in just to make it work if it's not actually supporting your processes. So don't make fake business apps and app services because you're trying to follow the model. Use the entities that seem most appropriately and ask yourself if the processes that work on those entities apply to the thing you're doing, then do it. And if it doesn't fit, then that's where you start making stuff up and how do I limit customization? All the rest of that discussion goes on. But don't try and force fit things just to make the model work.
I wanted to show one more on that last example I had. I forgot I had one more piece on that. Central IT. Oh, here we go. So the other perspective on this one is that you have the product manager over here, right? But now somebody came in from department 2 and said, now I have my own service, right? So I have a service center for department 2 that's unique from the service center from department 1. It's unique because it has different fulfillers. It's unique because it has a different intake, right? So they basically have their own ITSM sectioned off for department 2. So the other perspective here would be this person. Instead of this person, what does this person need to see, right? So now what they're doing is they're coming in and they're saying, hey, central IT is providing me ITSM, but I'm consuming it as department 1. So what am I using in IT service management? Well, they offered me IT service management. I'm using change, incident, and request. So if I have a problem in department 1, I need to come in and say, I'm department 1 incident management. I'm department 1 request management, because that was configured for department 1. So it's different than department 2 or department 3. Right. So that's where you can have those different internal consumers that, you know, in that use case where it's ITSM as a service to the other departments. So hopefully that's coming across, that there's a lot of different perspectives on the CSDM model. And that's why I said there's no one way to model it, right? Because everybody's going to have a little bit of a different perspective depending on how you come at it. Is Barry on today? Barry, are you here? I'm going to go through this and I'm going to say a couple comments, welcome you to say a couple comments, whether it's just pointing out some things that I miss or questions. But with this one, we went through this. We had 2 pieces, like a 2-series section where we said it was for ITSM implement or for CSDM implementers, trials and tribulations of CSDM implementers. So we had a bunch of people came from the field and talk about all of these implementations that they did, and then how they justified building out certain parts of the model. And Barry brought this one in. I don't know if he's here today, but hopefully he can chime in too. But I'll walk through how this model works, and we'll go from kind of a top down on it. So if we do the crawl, walk, run, right, this is how they had the business applications defined. So the mid server, which is its own piece of software, was actually listed in the business app table. So this is where there's some decisions on, you know, whether you're going to list those separately. So even though you're not buying the mid server separately in ServiceNow, and then they had change listed separately too, and I had it grouped as ITSM. So there's an ITSM contract that we're maintaining, and I just grouped all those under them. So there were some reasons why they had these separate, where there's like different people responsible at these levels for the business application. And to your point before, right, there's money being spent here and there's people responsible for that. And there's, you know, the money being spent includes people working on it. So that could have been the justification here, is to do costing at these levels. And here the platform, the ServiceNow platform, that's why this is a reference line up here. So the ServiceNow platform is providing both of these applications that we have here. Any other comments or anything before I click the next button? We're going to build this out.
So a business application would be analogous to an application component in Archimate.
Ooh, I'm not sure if it maps directly.
Ask that question again.
Would a business application in ServiceNow in the CSDM or CDSM, would that be analogous to an application component in Archimate language?
So we're going to have an upcoming session that I'm still booking the speakers for, but I'll say you can do that, and I do that frequently, but they're not one-to-one. It's like a translation where both mean slightly different from one another, depending on how you're using it, what viewpoint you're trying to tell. It's a good place to start.
And Archimate also has an application service too, right?
Yes. Yeah, it does.
But again, Archimate uses the word service different from how we do in common services data model with business services, tech services, and app services. They look a lot alike, but the definitions are different.
Yep. Yeah, the same with product. We get really caught up with all the definitions of product and services.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So we have this built out in our environment where ServiceNow is that platform host, and we have a platform application for, let's say, APM or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
And so we're using that model. Would those relationships automatically be built? Because I'm looking at one right now for like Adobe Creative Cloud, where we have that as a platform host. And it looks like those relationships to reference, you said that they were reference relationships, aren't being built automatically. Is that something we would have to build manually, or
Yeah, you have to
did that
build
automatically
those,
come up?
you have to build those in the business app table.
Okay. So you just make that connection. You just connect it, and it does a reference on its own. It doesn't do it automatically. It's a manual thing.
Right. When you come into the CSDM, when you're defining that business application in the table, it will go in. Let me show you one real quick.
Appreciate that. Yep. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. This is what we're here for, to show you that. So that little dotted line, the reference one, you can't do it in the design or everything, because it doesn't build references. It only builds relationships. So if this thing cooperates with me, and we'll go into, I think I have ITSM in here. Yeah, so if I have the Google Suite's another one. So ServiceNow ITSM.
Yeah.
Is a COTS versus homegrown, like that drone app. That's what Charles was saying here. If you're spending money and doing more investment on it, you probably want it in the business app table, so you could say it's a homegrown app that I'm tracking. So here, what you would do is you would say, you would define the platform host called ServiceNow first.
Yep.
And you would actually go ahead and pick that, put that in here. And then this architecture type of ServiceNow ITSM is a platform application. So you have to,
that's what we have. So we'd see
Okay.
that in the dependency map, not necessarily in the relationship, I think is what we're.
you won't see it in the dependency map because it's a reference.
Oh, got it. So where would we see that?
Actually, you can see it in there. You can see the reference in the dependency map.
So if we go in here now,
It's not a relationship, but you can have it set to be able to see the reference.
yeah, because I see the business application ITSM, but I don't see.
If you go to the filters, I think it is, there's some place you enable that.
Okay.
But you can see the reference. There's a way to enable it.
Yeah, this is Vancouver too. So I have
yeah, and I mean, you can see it in Tokyo.
Okay. I didn't know you can do that.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank where it's at. Maybe it's the relationship types.
Yeah, because I thought I tried to do this a couple of times, because the other problem too is with the business service to service offerings, you can't see it because it's a reference. In
I'm playing
relationship
with it now. I'm in it
Yeah,
right now too. So
you can see those references. There's a property or something that has to be set, but I see it in our Tokyo instance,
Okay, great.
but it's not a CI relationship. It's still a reference, but it's enabling to be able to see, maybe it's the dependency map
Yep.
properties.
Yep. You don't see it down here either. So because these are only the rels. So
Correct.
you see it here, and then I didn't know you can see it in the dependency map. So that's great if you can.
Yeah,
yeah,
try to
I'll play with that and see if I can find it.
Okay.
if I can
Thank you.
find where it is, but I did the same thing. I have our ServiceNow platform and I have the change and incident, everything broken out, and I can see it in the maps and show it. And then we had a productization effort going on and started to show some of the services and offerings in the map.
Yeah.
So what does that look like internally when you're looking at the JSON or XML? Is that just you just see platform host as a value, as a key, and then
it's a reference.
Value?
It's a reference to another application in the business app table.
Okay.
Yep.
Correct. So it'd be just like if you have a division or a location or a user or a group,
yep,
where you'd see the reference to something in quotes in a sysid.
So when you go here, that becomes a mandatory field. So if I say this is a platform app, now it forces me to pick a platform host.
Got it. And that record just looks like any other record, any other business application record, or is it different?
Oh yeah, this ServiceNow is just another business application record. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Cool. So that's the business app, and then if we start to see, yeah.
Before you move on, so there's a lot of not agreement on what is and what isn't a business application, right?
Yep.
And one of I think the gentleman was talking about, right, is that if you're going to create that, there has to be some value in creating at that level, because we incur a penalty of a license for each time we create one of those.
Yep. There has to be a business reason. So that's what comes down to your practices, right? And your
yeah, because it's not free to create those business apps. So
well, if you have APM, it's not. But if you don't have APM,
right,
you can still use that table, but you don't get all of the features, right?
Okay.
But with APM, you are paying because there's this assumption that you're doing advanced things like rationalizations and technology portfolio management and those types of things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so you do have to make sure that you have the right reason to put it in there. And we're talking a lot about that too. Like we had the Business Architecture Guild on, and we can populate, they have all these capabilities defined, but really thinking about what you're going to use this for is another really important piece. Like I tell a lot of people, if you're just using this for incident management and you want to just see like what are all the servers for that application, you don't need any of this stuff, right? You don't have to populate it. For incident resolution and change, why would you even fill in the business application table, right? So you really got to think hard about why you're putting this data up there and if you're going to use it. So kind of be ready to use it before you populate it, or it just gets stale and you just get, crappy tables over time, right? Because nobody's really maintaining it.
John, just quick question, if I may. This will just help me. Is a business application the same sort of thing as an architectural building block within TOGAF?
Yeah.
It can be. Again,
Cool.
they're not one-to-one names.
Yeah,
and it can be one-to-many relationships. So you could have.
What I'm saying is the meta models are different. So the concept of a CSDM business application and the concept of the TOGAF block, you can represent one with the other, but just like you're translating between any languages, nuance is lost. They don't always mean the same thing.
Well, there's the continuum in there too, right? Which, if this is an adopted model like that, I mean, That's a big thing when you're saying you're using the CSDM as a reference architecture, right? You're basically extending that.
To the
Yeah,
comment
it's
earlier
really
about
to
knowing what you want
understand
to
the
use this
concept of
for.
the.
Yeah. 'Cause-
Sorry.
Sorry. So the comment earlier about know what you want to use it for before you populate the data. There's also some comments in the chat or questions about a lot of these things change regularly, especially if you're dealing with vendor provided solutions. Yes, that does, right? But when you do this, you are making a commitment to maintain that. And the reality is you need to evaluate this data regularly to make sure it's still accurate and up to date, because it's intended for planning and strategy type conversations and planning purposes. And if it's not accurate, none of those processes work effectively.
Yep. Yep. Really good point. And that's why I always tell people too, right? Like, let's not just do this to do it. Let's see why we're doing it first.
And why we're doing it is the processes.
Yeah.
This data is either supporting your processes and things are flowing, or your processes are failing, like you can't assign budget or people to the right things, or you can't figure out what broke. Like, if your processes are working, you got your CSDM right. If your processes aren't working, it doesn't matter what you got in your CSDM, it's worthless. Like, it's all about utility to processes, and each of those color areas has different processes they're paying attention to. That's why those nuances between what's a business app, which is about planning and rationalization and design and budget and heads, is different from the orange box where you're talking, okay, now we're supporting real instances of the thing and something actually just broke and we got to go fix it. It's different processes.
Yeah. Cool. ServiceNow modeled in the platform. So ServiceNow modeled in the platform, that's what this is here, Tina. Is this getting to what you want? Because this is actually ServiceNow.
I think for me, it's caused more confusion, but part of it is, I mean, I feel like even the architects have different views.
We do
Like-
frequently.
Yeah.
Yes.
So-
It's who are you building it for, I think, is the big part of it. Like, if you're the platform owner, you're building it for the platform owner, it's probably going to be more looking like this versus some of the other ones that I showed that were for kind of different people.
Yeah,
So-
well, I mean, as we're building up our CMDB, we just want to make sure we're going the right direction with, because we could take all the ServiceNow capabilities and make them technical services. That's the direction we've gone. I've seen them made products. So you have ServiceNow as a business application and you have a product for change, a product. I've seen that done.
Yeah.
I've seen it done different ways, and I wasn't sure what was the most consistent with CSDM.
It changes a lot too. So a lot of times we're changing the architecture for, in a company to give them multiple instances, and right. So this is kind of a constant changing thing. And here the decision too, like in mine, I said, look, there's like my simple example, there was a ServiceNow prod. So what they're doing here is they're saying, hey, we have a mid server, and that mid server or mid servers, right, needs care and feeding. So there's actually a team that takes care of the mid server. So there's a cost to that we're tracking in our business application table. Even though there's not a license, right, there's still a cost. They still got to take care of those things. So they decided to track that here. Most people probably wouldn't track it here. They'd probably just roll it up under ServiceNow. But in this case, there was a decision to do that. Then we have the ServiceNow business application, right, which is supporting these two business apps. And it has its own environment, right? It's prod, QA. So all of these are using that license, right? That ServiceNow license, because we're entitled through the ServiceNow platform to run all these environments. Okay, now what's interesting here is they split out HR, right? So they said that for HR specifically has its own support team. So if you have a problem with HR, I don't want you to go to the ServiceNow team. I want you to come to HR, because HR does not let the ServiceNow admins in HR. So there's an HR admin that's actually in charge of this application service, which is specifically the HR application. Right. So sometimes in organizations, this changes. Like in your organization, Tina, if you were running all internal apps for employees, and then you decided, hey, we're going to start running student services, right? You might want to route student services people for level 2 to one place, and then internal employee apps like ITSM to another place. So this is largely defining the support model. Like, so I'll build at the last piece, right? Because what they're providing here is they're saying we're providing onboarding, mobile onboarding, or enterprise onboarding for those particular services. If I'm the incident person and I say, look, somebody's complained mobile's not working, I want to pop a ticket, put mobile in there, and then I want to click on a dependency map, and I want to see that I can escalate to the HR prod team, right? I can go here. But if I had incident management, right, then I might go right to the ServiceNow team, or I might go to an ITSM team. So what you're defining here is the flow through your organization on who owns or what team owns the different parts of it. And that's why it said there's no common way to model ServiceNow. It's different in every organization. And it changes as you go, right? As you use different platform apps, you may decide that, hey, for HR, we're going to have this different model for level 2 escalations.
Yeah, from there you have to understand your choices have implications, but don't be afraid to question them and reassess. And you may make a choice later to adjust how you decided to model it, because it provides you additional value and insights.
Yep. And then also the teams too, right? Like HR is saying, look, I don't want you guys calling, because all they do is forward to us anyway. So just have them call us directly, right? And the same thing with a change. When a change comes in, I want this team to be involved in the change process. So I have a change team involved here as well.
John, why do you have the application services on the level of releases for ServiceNow and the technical services on without releases?
Yeah, this was interesting what they did here. And I was hoping Barry was on today, because he had a specific narrative around this back in the trials and tribulations. But they actually set the ServiceNow teams up as a level 3 in the technical service offering. So if you had a problem with the prod server, or you had a problem with the any of these, right, and you needed to escalate, that would go back to these teams. So there's a prod team, and then so these teams took care of all the instances. And sometimes, like in a multi-instance environment, you might have one ServiceNow team that takes care of 3 instances. So what they're doing here is, instead of drawing the individual contains and making a mess on the diagram, they just kind of looped it in and say, look, all of these environments contain that ServiceNow prod tech service offering. So there's one team you go to for level 3. So that's the way they define it. Just like I would come here and I'd say, look, I want to go to I want an operating system. I want a Linux server. It's more of a general help. Like a level 3 help that would take you all the way down to the operating system level. That's kind of the same thing with ServiceNow. There's teams, individual teams that support prod and non-prod environments.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. In that contains relationship, when you go from a tech service offering,
hey, John,
and you go to an app service, it's going to give you that contains relationship. So that's the recommended relationship in CSDM. Oh, it's down here.
Hey, John, sorry, I got to jump because I'm late for a meeting, but this is exactly what I really wanted to talk about. Will you have another meeting on this at some point in the future?
Yeah, we can do one. Today was specifically to just focus on all the different models around ServiceNow, modeling ServiceNow itself. But we can definitely do another one, especially with the implementers. We had those guys in, they came in and showed real world examples. So this is one of those real world examples where he said, this is a real, he took the customer name out, but this is actually somebody has that modeled. But some of those early ones that I showed, real simple models just to get you started. Those are all in process as well. Now, one thing before you do leave, this link on the bottom, this link will take you to a broader conversation that we had in the past. And I think we can repeat those sessions. So there is a deck that you can get that's really detailed on all of the different use cases. It's like somebody who mentioned the telco use case. It'd probably be good to click on this link when I give you the deck, because that'll give you some of those details. So what that link will do is it'll take you here to our November 10th meeting. And there's actually a video of this where Barry and Eric went through it. And this gives you some really good details on all the different models and how they do it in the field, how they run the models. So that's what I'm using in there is actually part 1 I'm using. So I think it'll be, so the videos are there. You can go back in there, and then we'll try to get another meeting with these. If you can send me some specific content you want to hear on CSDM, like Tina was very specific about saying, I want to see ServiceNow modeled, which is what we tried to focus on today. Let me know.
Will do. Thanks, John. This is really good. Appreciate it.
And the PS
John, you're
guys,
welcome to come and map our company as an example if you like.
I would
what was
say
that?
that
I didn't hear you.
I was just saying you're welcome to come and map our company as an example if you like.
Yeah, I wanted to show you one here. So we do have an offering in our architecture group, and I'll close with this. I didn't realize how long we were. I love these conversations. But we could actually do this. We could come in and design one for you. It's actually on the environment that I showed you. You could design your own, but if you want our help, we have a 2-hour workshop we can do this in. And then we'll import that design into, show you a dependency map. And then we'll show it to you in DPM, what you get in DPM. So it's kind of a quick way to get through one. Some people call it the string across the river to build the bridge from, right? We build one from end to end. So this way you can understand it and discuss it in your environment. So this, you can ask your rep if you want this workshop, the Common Service Data Model pattern, we call it, where we'll come in and walk through and talk through one of those with you. Thanks everybody for your time. Sorry for going so far over.
John, what was the name of the workshop?
It's the Common Service Data Model workshop. It's through the Enterprise Architecture Group.
Okay.
And you can get to
I would
us.
say there's a
through
lot of
your
interest in this
FTP.
type of topic because you had 173 people here today. That's more than you've had in a lot of your recent meetings. So more of this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
more of this type of modeling.
a lot more of this because there's a lot of confusion. And Tina, I think you pointed out, nobody agrees.
Yeah, we should get somebody, like maybe next time we just get one of you on the phone and we just do one from scratch, like have the conversation and just drag the boxes around and just build one like I do on this workshop, but in one of these meetings. Maybe have Mark here with us to kind of slap our hand when we're doing the wrong thing.
That would be awesome.
Okay. All right, we'll set that up.